Ollie was just reading a book, minding his own business in his apartment, when he heard something strange. It sounded like rain, but it also just kind of sounded like hail. Like big things were falling. But that didn't make a lot of sense because it was the middle of summer. And the only way you get hail in the middle of summer is if you have a tornado or a hurricane or something. But you would have heard the wind and the storm warnings if there had been a hurricane and tornado. Besides, you don't get those things normally in Baltimore. So, Ollie went to his window and he saw something that he couldn't explain well at first. Because it looked to him like broccoli was falling from the sky. In a pretty large quantity, too. Broccoli just falling like rain. No, falling like hail, more like, I guess. Just piling up on the street. And I thought, all right, that can't be what it looks like. That can't be broccoli. So he scampered downstairs as quickly as he could and got outside and picked up a couple of pieces, and it looked like broccoli. It smelled like broccoli. He squeezed it and it felt like broccoli. Like fresh broccoli. The stems feeling smooth and firm, and the florets feeling, crunchy and separated. And he thought, all right, there's only one way. I'm going to have to answer this question. And so he took a bite, and it tasted like broccoli. It tasted like pretty good broccoli, actually. Flavorful, sweet. Not overly bitter, but enough bitterness that you could really taste, really taste like broccoli. It didn't taste like random vegetable. It tasted like broccoli. I looked up, and the broccoli was just falling from the sky. I thought, well, this is a weird one. I better get to the bottom of it. So we called up a couple of friends around town and said, hey, is broccoli, this is going to sound crazy, but is broccoli falling from the sky where you are? And his friend over in, down in Fed Hill said, broccoli? No, broccoli falling from the sky here. And his friend way out at Security Square Park said, broccoli? No broccoli here. His friend over in Remington said, yeah, definitely. Big pieces, too. And I said, really? I said, yeah, the pieces that are falling down here are like, I'd say the size of, wow, it's a good comparison. Like the size of a child's hand, I would say. Interesting. The pieces here are smaller. The pieces here are closer to the size of like a carrot. Like I said, weird. So then I called his friend who lived over by Mondowan Mall. And she said that the pieces were falling there, and they were about the size of a carrot. So that's kind of interesting. So we called a friend of his that lived in Reservoir Hill, right near the highway. And that person said, yeah, they're pretty big here. Yeah, I'd say that a child's hand is a pretty good comparison for what I'm seeing here. I thought, this is getting weird. I started kind of drawing these things on a map. I said, all right, so it looks like it's getting bigger as you get closer to the highway. Let me see here. And he called a friend down in Bolton Hill. which is south of Reservoir Hill. I said, yeah, I'd say like smaller than carrots, but bigger than hot dogs. And a friend in Hamden said, oh, they're really big here. Like as big as an adult's fist here. I said, really? Yeah, they're huge. I called a friend in, what's the neighborhood called? Roland Park, which is north of Hamden. I said, yeah, no, like carrot-sized, carrot hot dog somewhere in there. And I thought, huh. So it seems to be biggest in Hamden. I better get over there. So Ollie made his way as quickly as he could over to Hamden to see if he could, because it seemed like, from the calls he'd made, that it was like a big circle. And there was somewhere in Hamden, he thought, where there got to be the biggest. And everywhere around there, it seems to get smaller and smaller the further he got away from wherever that was. But he didn't have enough data to get a real precise center on the phenomenon. But as you got further away, the pieces got smaller, and if you got far enough away, they weren't falling at all. Well, I paused for a moment and thought that there must be some areas kind of in the middle, like, well, kind of farther away, but like Oliver or Ednor Gardens, where it was like micro broccoli. And I made a note to call up people in those neighborhoods later on and see. So that's not connected. That's not helpful. I need to figure out what the center of this thing is, because I bet wherever the center of it is the cause of it too. So we got over to Hamden. It took a little bit of time because the buses were having trouble with this broccoli situation. And he didn't have a bicycle. It's not that far of a walk from where he lives, but it took him a good 20, 25 minutes to get over there. And he was going as quickly as he could without running. He did get a hand on Hopkins campus. One of the security guards who knew Ollie saw him and went over on their little golf carts, which were still getting by okay on the even over the broccoli. I said, Ollie, yo, what's going on, man? What's going on? I said, I'm not sure. Can you help me get over to Hamden? I think whatever's going on is going on there. I said, yeah. I can take you as far as Keswick, I think, before anybody notices that I'm gone. I said, awesome. But they got as far as Keswick. Like I said, I got to turn around. These pieces are getting too big for me. I don't want to get stuck. I said, that's no problem. Go for it. Thank you. And he was right. The pieces were big. These were like the size of an adult's foot. Big, huge chunks of broccoli, just whop, 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 whop. Well, I had to be careful. And it was just broccoli, so it wasn't that heavy, but he was worried that if he got hit, the wrong way, he could really get hurt. He tried the best as he could to move and be able to see, if the pieces were bigger in front of him than they were behind him. It was tricky. It was hard. It was subjective, and the pieces weren't all the same size in any given spot. So he was trying to move quickly, but while also making sure he was moving in the right direction. But after a few minutes, he noticed something that it seemed like he kind of got a bearing, like he kind of got a direction. And knowing the neighborhood, I thought it looks like maybe the center of all this is the Baltimore Free Farm. I was like, you know what? It's as good a hunch as anything. I'm going to go straight there. Well, I tried to observe the sizes of the broccoli pieces as he headed that way, but he headed straight there. He even went over some fences and some other things because it was getting weird. The broccoli was getting deep. He got to the Free Farm, which is on a hill near 83, kind of on the edge of Hamden. And there, the broccoli pieces were big. It was like whole heads of broccoli falling out of the sky. And he came around and he knocked on the door to the little building where some of the people there lived and worked. He said, "Hey, it's my name's Ollie the Octopus. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. Can somebody open the door, please? I'm getting pelted with giant pieces of broccoli." Knocked on the warehouse door, and nobody answered, and he jiggled the handle, and it didn't come. He went over to there's a little house that's associated with the farm. I knocked on the door there, I said the same thing. And nobody answered, but he thought he heard somebody inside crying. He said, "Are you okay? I can help. Is it all right if I come in?" And he just heard the crying. Well, I tried the door handle, and it was unlocked. So I thought, well, I'm not helping this person outside, and I'm also not stopping this broccoli rain from outside. I should wait until I get permission, but I'm going to go in. So I opened up the door, made his way in. As he did, the broccoli from this, just like rolling in the door, but Ollie got the door shut. I said, "Hello? Hello? Can anyone hear me? I can hear you. Are you all right?" And he heard this crying. It was off in the corner, and Ollie got out his flashlight, which he'd brought along with him, and shined it where he thought he heard the crying. And there was a young woman in her mid-20s, maybe. And she was just crying and staring out the window. I said, "Ma'am, my name's Ollie the Octopus. I'm a private eye. I don't know what's going on outside, but I'd like to try and help you if I can." She said, "It's all my fault. It's all my fault. I don't know what to do about it. I shouldn't have been messing. Oh, this is too big. This is too big for me. This is too big for me, Mr. Octopus." I said, "You can just call me Ollie. You've done something weird and magical, haven't you?" She said, "Yeah, I didn't mean to. It's just the broccoli is so small that we were growing, and it's so hard to run a nonprofit like this. You know, if we don't have great produce, then it's really hard to, make rent, let alone enough to pay for people's to have, health insurance and be able to save up a little bit. I just wanted us to have some good broccoli." I said, "Well, you've got a lot of broccoli now. What did you do?" She motioned at the floor, and Ollie shined his flashlight down on the floor, and there on the floor was this elaborate symbol in the vague shape of a 5-pointed star. I said, "Oh, you've cast some sort of agricultural magic." I said, "Yeah, I had this book. I've had it for a long time, but it's called Crop Magic, and I didn't think it was serious. I certainly didn't think it was real. So I was feeling frustrated about the broccoli, so I followed the instructions in one of the pages about broccoli. And it says to make this pattern out of salt, and that's what's down there, and I used really fancy salt. And I did really thick lines, and I said the little incantation over and over and over again, and I didn't think anything was happening. I don't really believe in this stuff. Who does, But I was just goofing around and maybe a little bit desperate, and then all of a sudden, it started falling, the broccoli. And I knew right away I'd done something terrible. But I didn't think it was this. Now everything's covered in broccoli. No one's going to want any of my broccoli. And I don't know how to get rid of all the broccoli. I don't even know how to make it stop. I said, there's broccoli covering a large portion of the city right now. And she started crying even harder. I said, "I have an idea. I don't know a lot about witchcraft, but I think I know how to stop it. I said, how? How can we stop it? How can we stop this much broccoli? I think we need to destroy the salt circle. If we destroy the salt circle, that should break the spell. I don't know what happens after that, but I bet the broccoli will stop falling. She said, of course. And she threw herself down on the design that she'd drawn in salt and scattered the salt with her hands. Immediately, as soon as she broke the pattern, there was a flash of light around the perimeter. As soon as she broke the perimeter, and in an instant, the broccoli stopped falling. But there were still parts of the pattern that were still intact. I looked. I said, it's over. The broccoli stopped as soon as you broke the circle. I looked out of the window, and by now, at least there at the free farm, the broccoli was 4 feet high. It was up to the window. I said, what am I going to do? This is a huge amount of broccoli. This is going to be like a public health hazard. I don't even, let alone is anybody going to want to buy any broccoli. I said, I don't know. Let's get this here the rest of the way cleaned up. She said, yeah, I'll go get a broom. And she went out into the kitchen, came back with a broom and started sweeping up the salt. And then something remarkable happened. As she swept up the salt, as she broke the rest of the pattern into nothing, into just a pile of salt, the broccoli started to melt, got soft, drooped. And as she kept sweeping, the broccoli got softer and started to kind of get a little bit transparent, a little bit clear. She got all the salt up into the dustpan. Broccoli began to just shrink even more and go even more clear and colorless, and the green of the broccoli went away. And as she dumped the salt into the trash can, there was a sploosh. And all the lines between the broccolis gave way. And it was just water. Water everywhere. All the broccoli turned into water. All at once. And that was better than having a bunch of broccoli, but still kind of dangerous because all the water rushed down into the Jones Falls at once, and it rushed into the other waterways. Like a rainstorm, except with all the water hitting in a split second. There were some flash floods, and some basements got flooded, and some other stuff got washed away, but at least the city wasn't covered in broccoli anymore. The young lady said, I suppose you have to turn me in, don't you? I said, if I turned you in, no one would ever believe either of us, even with what they've seen. So, no, I'm not going to turn you in. Plus, I'm not sure you even did anything wrong. It's not against the law to cast magical spells, even if they happen to work, which they usually don't, but yours did, apparently. There's nothing illegal about it. Besides, I'm not a cop. I'm a private eye. It's not my job to turn people in unless I'm paid to do that. She gave him a big hug. I said, thank you so much. I promise I won't dabble in witchcraft anymore. And I said, well, you be careful. Especially with that book. She said, why don't you take the book? I don't even want it in here anymore. I said, all right. I'll keep it safe and keep it closed. So I left. Before he left, he said that he promised he'd come back next week and buy some vegetables. He headed on his way home and looked at the book. He stopped on the way at Falcon Hands and got a big leather strap and bound the book up in it. He took it home and put it on his shelf, a little bit away from the other books. And thought, well, if I never need to open that, that'll be too soon. That is the case of Ollie. and the accidental broccoli witch.